Okay, so this is like my 10th time trying to film the introduction to this video because it feels really weird talking to nothing. I do have a little bit of practice because I did used to have a YouTube channel a long time ago, but that was about 4 years ago, so it's been a while. But I've had a lot of different people ask me a lot of different questions about what I've been doing for the past 3 months. If you don't know, I have been travelling for the past 3 months. I was in Thailand and then I was in Bali. I spent a little bit of time in Kuala Lumpur and then I was in Japan, and I literally just got back yesterday. So I'm a little bit jet lagged, but I just wanted to do this video because I found it really useful when planning my trip to watch videos and read blogs and stuff about how solo travellers found, travelling by themselves and how they budgeted different things and how much different things cost. So I thought I would do this video just to help anybody who's interested in travelling for a bit, or I don't know, just wants to hear about what I've been doing for the past 3 months. This video is going to be about my time in Japan. I was there for a total of 3.5 weeks, and it was so amazing, completely different to Thailand and Bali. So before I talk about my actual time in Japan, I thought I would maybe go over some of the kind of necessary boring things that you have to do before you travel to any place that's kind of outside your country. So I had to do a lot of research before I went travelling because there were a lot of things I needed to do and a lot of things I needed to buy and book and just go over, because this was the first time I've ever travelled anywhere by myself without any family members or friends or anything like that, so it was quite nerve-wracking. So I wanted to make sure I was as prepared as possible so that if anything went wrong I would be fine. So I think the first thing I wanted to, I've got my list down here, so if I keep looking down, that's why. So obviously when you're planning a trip to somewhere, the first thing is flights, I guess. So I didn't fly from England to Narita, I flew from Kuala Lumpur because that's where I was before Japan. So I flew from Kuala Lumpur to Narita with ANA Airlines, and it was about £319. So that's how much my flight to Japan was, and then when I was coming back to England, my flight from Narita to Newcastle was with Emirates, and that was £800. I'm not sure what a return flight would be because I didn't do that, so I'm sorry if you would be looking for a return flight, but yes. So the next thing I had to think about was vaccinations. When I was going, I not only had to look at vaccination recommendations for Japan, but I also had to look at recommendations for Thailand and Bali as well. So I went to the doctors, and the nurse recommended to look at the website Travel Health Pro, which you can go on and look at all of the vaccination recommendations for the countries that you're going to. So for Japan it was recommended that I get tetanus, Japanese encephalitis and rabies. I was going to get rabies anyway because I know that in Thailand and Bali it's highly recommended that you get rabies. You do have to pay for rabies and Japanese encephalitis. My Japanese encephalitis vaccinations I had to get 2 of, and I think they're about £97 each. And then my rabies vaccinations, I had to get 3 of them, and they were, I think, maybe £80 each, and I had to get them about 6 months before. So they are quite expensive, but you can die from rabies, so it was one that I knew I definitely wanted to get because especially for Thailand there are so many stray animals over there, so that's why I had them. But there weren't very many vaccination recommendations for Japan because it is such a safe and clean and quite modernised country. So really the vaccinations that I had to worry about were more for Thailand and Bali than Japan. So yeah, they were the ones I got specifically for Japan. But I would really recommend looking at Travel Health Pro, the website, because it is extremely helpful, and it also has country information and things to be aware of, outbreaks of diseases that are going on, just general news of the country. It's a very helpful site and I would definitely recommend it. Or you can just go on the NHS website that has a lot of vaccination recommendations, or just, you know, pop into your doctors and ask them what they think you should get. So the next thing on my list of things to go over is travel insurance. Now, I've heard a lot of different stories about people not getting travel insurance because they think it's useless and, you know, it's just extra money that they don't want to have to spend. I completely disagree with that. I think travel insurance is so important to get. When my dad went to Japan, like 15 years ago, he got extremely ill and had to spend a couple of weeks in hospital, and I thought he was going to die at one point, and his hospital bills were insanely expensive that if he didn't have travel insurance he would have had to try and find all that money from nowhere. So I think it is so important to get travel insurance. Mine was very expensive because I had something to declare. When you have some kind of illness or injury or some kind of problem that you have to declare, it does up the travel insurance price, but the price of travel insurance is nothing compared to medical bills that can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, sometimes even millions. So I think it is extremely important. Mine was £317, and I had to declare my idiopathic scoliosis. So that's why it was so expensive, and I used Stay Sure, and it covers everything, you know, anything that could have gone wrong, that didn't, thankfully, but could have gone wrong, I would have been covered by them. So extremely important. I know a lot of people don't get it, but I really would recommend doing that. Next thing on my list is visas. Always extremely important to check whenever you go to any country if you need to apply for some kind of visa. For Japan, it is quite a long time. You can be in the country for quite a long time without needing a visa, and I can't remember if it is 6 months or maybe a bit longer. I will look it up and insert the number here, but I know that I didn't need to apply for a visa when going to the country. And the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is quite an important one again, is to always check the weather of the country that you're going to. When I was in Japan, on the 12th of October, there was a massive typhoon that went right over the place I was staying. Obviously it's not really something that can be predicted, so, you know, when you're booking a trip, you can't, I think it's hard to avoid things like that because they can just come out of nowhere. Also just to check what the weather's supposed to be like at the time of year when you go to a country, to know what kind of clothes to pack, what to expect, you know, it's always just very useful to check what the weather's going to be like. So after you've done all of the boring stuff, it's now the fun time, and you get to plan where you actually want to go in the country that you're traveling to. So after, you know, deciding that I wanted to go to Japan, I made a list of all the things I wanted to see and the cities I wanted to go to and the places I wanted to see. I did a lot of research before going on this trip, and I found that one of the best ways to get around Japan is using the bullet trains and the subway. So I decided to get the Japan Rail Pass for 14 days. Now this was £351 for 14 days, which I know sounds quite expensive, and you know, it is it is quite expensive for just 2 weeks, but it's so helpful. Not only does it cover the bullet trains, but it covers a lot of the normal trains and even some bus routes as well, so it is a really useful thing to get around Japan. And I met a lot of people whilst in the hostels that also had rail passes, because they're just such a good thing to have, especially when you're doing long journeys in between different cities. So yeah, I would definitely recommend getting the rail pass if you plan on covering a lot of Japan. If you just want to go to 1 or 2 places or stay in the same place for a long amount of time, I don't think it's necessary at all, because most of the trains are relatively cheap anyway. So to buy a rail pass when you know you're not really going to use the bullet trains is a bit pointless in my opinion. So yeah, I was very worried about getting the trains in Japan, because you know, I was worried I would get lost because some of the stations are so big, or that, you know, no one would know English. But they are such a considerate country in the fact that a lot of them have learned English purely for tourists, because they're like, Japan is becoming a lot more touristy, with the Rugby World Cup that was on when I was there. The Olympics are in Tokyo next year, so they have put a lot of English signs up, because they know that a lot of tourists will be coming into the country in the next couple of years. So yeah, it's very easy to find your way around. You just kind of have to, I would recommend maybe looking up in advance the train route that you have to get, or the train line, and then, you know, they just have signs pointing to where you need to go. Or you can just ask somebody which platform you need to be on. Everyone is very, very helpful there. So yeah, it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Okay, so the next thing on my list of things to cover is accommodation. I booked this all in advance before I got to Japan, because I wanted to make sure that I knew I would have a place to sleep at night, rather than just, you know, booking it whilst in the country. I decided that I wanted to stay in hostels, not only because they are a lot cheaper than hotels, but also because I was travelling by myself, so it's a great way to meet new people. I used the site Hostel World when booking my accommodation, and the prices of the hostels can vary a lot. You can have ones that are £8 a night, you can have ones that are £70 a night. It really depends how much you're wanting to pay. All of the hostels that I stayed in were lovely, all the staff were so nice. They all spoke English, which was incredibly helpful. It's a very useful site because you only pay a certain percentage of the cost up front, and then you pay for the rest. You pay the rest of the amount once you get to the hostel. So if you need to cancel in advance, you get your money back, or if you know you don't turn up, it's not like you lost a lot because you only have to pay a percentage beforehand. It's incredibly easy to use and is a great way of just finding hostels. I know a lot of people also use booking.com and Agoda. I think they're quite popular websites to use for booking accommodation. But yeah, I was very happy with my hostel choices. I will leave links to the hostels that I stayed in the description box, just in case anybody, you know, is interested in going. They were all really nice and so central to everything that I wanted to see, which is also very useful, which meant that I could just walk to places rather than pay for buses or anything like that. I'd also recommending when booking a hostel is to, in the place you know you're going to, so for example when I went to Hiroshima, I made a list of all the things I wanted to see there, and then I kind of booked a hostel that was near to where all the sites I wanted to see was. There's no point booking a hostel that's miles and miles away from all the things that you want to see, because it means either you're having to pay for transport, or you know, it's just a lot more difficult to get to the places than if you're nearby. So I guess the last few things to cover are, you know, like food and spending money. The majority of the hostels that I stayed at had breakfast included, so I didn't really have to worry about that. And then for lunch I would usually go to a 7-Eleven or a Family Mart or something like that, because they're everywhere. They have 7-Elevens all over the place in Japan. So I would usually just get something from there and then sit on a table outside or a bench and eat it. I would say the average price of like a meal that you can get at 7-Eleven is like 400 yen. And then for dinner I would usually go to a restaurant or something. I never picked anywhere too expensive because I didn't want the majority of my money to go on food. But I would say maybe the average price for me when I was there for a meal was about 850 yen. And I have a currency converter app on my phone that I would use to just check how much things would be in pounds, just so I know kind of what I was spending and I could gauge how much I wanted to spend on a meal. But on average about 1,000 yen is £7, just for anybody that's wondering. So not as cheap as places like Thailand, where you can literally get a big meal for like £2, but you know, compared to England I would say it's similar, if not a bit cheaper. I think maybe the average meal, you know, if you were to go out in a restaurant in England, is probably about £11, maybe something like that. So I was spending about £7 on a meal, which I don't think is too bad. A lot of people say that Japan is quite an expensive country. I would say that it is expensive compared to places in Southeast Asia, you know, like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Bali, you know, Indonesia, all, you know, places like that. It is incredibly cheap, and I was amazed by how cheap it was there. So in regards to other places in Asia, yes, it is probably considered more expensive, but compared to, you know, the USA, England, I would say it's cheaper than that. But then it really just does depend on where you want to go for food. So as for how much I spent in Japan for the entire time that I was there, I spent £584, and that is including all accommodation, all food, anything I bought myself, any bus tickets that weren't covered by my rail pass, just things like that. That doesn't include, you know, the flights or anything, or vaccinations. That's just what I spent in the country. I would recommend taking money to exchange. You can exchange it in the airport, or, you know, I did see a few places actually around some of the cities where you can exchange money, just because at least you know that you have money. You know, if you lost your card or it got stolen, you always have money there in case anything goes wrong. I would also recommend getting a SIM card. When I was buying my rail pass, I bought the SIM card along with it, and also a IC card, which you can put money on and then use it for the trains and buses that aren't included in the rail pass, so you don't have to go to the ticket machine all the time, you just scan the card. I think it's kind of like an Oyster card in the UK. I had an absolutely amazing time travelling around Japan. It is such an incredible country. I mean, so some parts were so modern and up to date and just kind of bustling with people, and then there were some parts that were just so rural and untouched and just absolutely stunning. Some of the temples are just gorgeous, and, you know, really amazing things to see, and I feel extremely lucky to have been able to go there. So yes, I go away again on Saturday, and then after that I plan on coming back, earning some more money, and then going off travelling again. I am currently on my gap year. Whether it will stay 1 year or increase to a few more years, we'll soon find out, but the goal is to just work and travel, because I've loved every second of it. These past 3 months have been incredible and so life-changing, and I would highly recommend just traveling in general. You know, I am very excited to explore more of the world. I hope you found this video useful, or, you know, helped you in planning a trip yourself, or even if you just watched it to be nosy and find out what I've been doing for the past month in Japan, then yeah, I hope you liked this video. So yeah, I am probably going to go and have a nap now because I'm extremely jet lagged. But I hope you liked this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in any of my future travels, I would recommend subscribing so you can keep updated with the videos I plan on posting about them. But yeah, I hope you liked it, and I guess I'll see you in my next video. Bye!